There is a point where earning more money stops solving the problem you thought it would solve. Your paycheck increases. Your career improves. Maybe your household income reaches a level that once sounded like financial success. And yet somehow the money still disappears. Not because of one disastrous purchase. Not because you suddenly became irresponsible. It happens quietly. A slightly more expensive apartment, a newer car, more meals outside, several subscriptions, a few upgrades that feel deserved after working harder. Each decision looks reasonable by itself. Together, they can create a life that requires almost every dollar you earn just to maintain. This is why financial stability isn't simply an income problem. It is often a complexity problem. The more financial commitments you create, the more of your future income becomes spoken for. And that leads to a different way of thinking about money. Instead of asking, how much more can I afford? A minimalist asks, how little do I need to sacrifice to live well? That question can completely change the way you manage money. And the 12 rules we're about to explore aren't about becoming cheap or depriving yourself. They're about removing financial decisions that don't meaningfully improve your life. Because the goal isn't to own nothing. The goal is to make sure what you own doesn't quietly own you. Rule 1. Keep a gap between your income and your lifestyle. Financial stability begins with something incredibly simple. Margin. Suppose your household brings home $7,000 a month. If your essential bills, debt payments, lifestyle expenses, and subscriptions consume $6,900, you may have a good income, but very little financial flexibility. One unexpected expense can immediately become a problem. Now imagine another household earning the same $7,000 but deliberately structuring its lifestyle around $5,500. That $1,500 difference creates options. It can build an emergency fund. It can pay down debt. It can pay down debt. It can fund retirement accounts. It can simply sit in savings and provide peace of mind. The difference isn't visible from the outside. Both households may drive similar cars and live in similar neighborhoods. But financially, they're living completely different lives. A minimalist budget doesn't try to maximize consumption. It protects the space between what you earn and what you are required to spend. That space is where financial freedom begins. Rule 2. Don't turn every raise into a new expense. A raise can change your financial future, or simply make your existing lifestyle more expensive. Imagine receiving an additional $800 every month after a promotion. At first you feel richer. Then you move somewhere nicer. Your rent rises by $350. You upgrade your car, adding another $250. Restaurants become more frequent. A few subscriptions appear. Suddenly, most of the raise has disappeared. Nothing went wrong. You simply converted temporary financial progress into permanent obligations. This is lifestyle inflation, and the dangerous part isn't that spending more is always bad. The danger is making higher spending irreversible. A minimalist approach is different. When income rises, increase your lifestyle deliberately, rather than automatically. Perhaps you spend some of the raise, but another portion immediately increases your savings or investment rate. That way, every career improvement doesn't just make your present more expensive. It also makes your future stronger. Rule 3. Build a no list. Most financial advice focuses on what you should do. Save this much, invest this much, pay this debt. But there's another powerful strategy. Decide what you simply won't do. For example, you might decide never to carry a credit card balance for discretionary purchases. You might refuse to finance a car that would make your monthly budget uncomfortable. You might decide that a sale isn't a reason to buy something you weren't already planning to purchase. These rules sound restrictive. In reality, they can make money management easier. Every financial decision requires mental energy. If you have already established your boundaries, you don't have to debate the same temptation every week. The question changes from, can I afford this? To, does this belong inside the financial life I've chosen? That's a much stronger question. Rule 4. Make recurring expenses earn their place. One-time purchases are easy to notice. Recurring expenses are different. A $20 monthly subscription doesn't feel significant. But 12 months turns it into $240. 5 subscriptions become $200 a year. And if those expenses continue for a decade, the amount becomes much larger, even before considering what that money could have earned if invested. The real danger of recurring expenses is psychological. Once a payment becomes automatic, your brain stops treating it like a new decision. That's why minimalist money management periodically asks a simple question. If I were not already paying for this, would I sign up for it today? If the answer is no, canceling it may be one of the easiest financial improvements available. You don't need to eliminate every subscription. You need to eliminate the ones that survived only because you stopped noticing them. Rule 5. Buy for use, not for identity. Some purchases are about function. Others are about what the purchase says about us. A luxury vehicle can be transportation, but it can also communicate success. A designer item can provide quality, but it can also communicate status. A larger home can provide space, but sometimes it becomes a symbol of achievement. There's nothing inherently wrong with any of these purchases. The problem begins when identity becomes dependent on consumption. Because once a purchase becomes part of your identity, reducing it can feel like losing something more important than the object itself. This is where minimalism becomes psychological. Before a major purchase, ask, would I still want this if nobody else knew I owned it? If the answer is yes, great. You probably value the product itself. If the answer suddenly becomes uncertain, you've discovered something useful. You may not be buying the object. You may be buying the feeling attached to the object, and feelings are expensive when you have to keep purchasing them. Rule 6. Protect yourself from fixed cost creep. Some expenses are flexible. Others become obligations. That distinction matters enormously. You can decide to eat at home tonight. You cannot easily decide to eliminate a car payment tomorrow. You can skip a vacation. You cannot immediately cancel a mortgage. You can stop shopping. You cannot instantly cancel a lease without consequences. This is why minimalist finances prioritize keeping fixed costs manageable. The lower your required monthly expenses, the more adaptable you become. That adaptability has real value. If your job changes, you have more time to respond. If an emergency happens, you have more room. If an investment opportunity appears, you have capital available. Financial stability isn't simply having money. It is having enough flexibility that one unexpected event doesn't control your entire life. Rule 7. Create friction before big purchases. The modern economy is designed around reducing friction. One click, saved payment information. Same-day delivery. Instant financing. Buy now, pay later. The easier something is to purchase, the less time your brain has to reconsider the decision. So create your own friction. For non-essential purchases above a certain amount, wait 24 hours. For expensive purchases, wait a week. For major lifestyle decisions, calculate the recurring cost before making the decision. That pause matters. Because wanting something today doesn't necessarily mean you'll value it next month. Minimalism gives your future self a vote, and sometimes the best purchase is the one you still want after the excitement disappears. Rule 8. Keep an emergency fund boring. People often want their savings to do something exciting. They want every dollar working aggressively. But an emergency fund has a different job. Its purpose isn't maximum growth. Its purpose is protection. If your car breaks down, your income temporarily falls, or a major household expense appears, accessible cash can prevent you from turning a temporary problem into expensive debt. The exact amount you need depends on your circumstances, income stability, household obligations, insurance, debt, and other factors. But the underlying principle is simple. Don't make your financial life so optimized for returns that you become vulnerable to ordinary emergencies. Sometimes boring money is valuable precisely because it is boring. Rule 9. Stop upgrading things that already work. One of the easiest ways to increase spending is to confuse old with bad. A phone that works, a reliable car, furniture that is functional, a laptop that performs the tasks you actually need. None of these automatically becomes financially obsolete because a newer version exists. Technology and marketing constantly create the impression that what you already own is falling behind. But financial minimalism asks a different question. Has the usefulness of what I own actually declined? If not, replacing it may provide very little additional value. And the money saved doesn't disappear. It can become something else. An investment, a debt payment, an emergency reserve, or simply more freedom. The richest decision isn't always buying the newest version. Sometimes it's refusing to participate in the upgrade cycle. Rule 10. Make saving automatic. There is a problem with relying entirely on willpower. Your priorities compete with your emotions every time money enters your checking account. So instead of asking yourself to make the right decision repeatedly, automate the decision. A portion of your paycheck can move towards savings or investments before you have the opportunity to spend it. This changes the psychology. You stop treating saving as whatever happens to remain after consumption. Saving becomes part of your financial infrastructure, and consistency matters more than dramatic bursts of motivation. Someone who automatically invests a manageable amount for decades can potentially build far more wealth than someone who occasionally saves large amounts but constantly interrupts the habit. The minimalist principle is simple. Make important financial behavior easy to repeat. Rule 11. Track your biggest expenses, not every penny. Budgeting can become counterproductive when it becomes an exhausting accounting exercise. Some people spend hours worrying about tiny purchases while ignoring the decisions that actually determine their financial trajectory. A $6 coffee isn't going to compensate for an unnecessarily expensive housing decision. A $12 lunch isn't the same financial issue as thousands of dollars in annual car costs. This doesn't mean small expenses don't matter. It means proportion matters. Focus your attention on the categories with the greatest impact: housing, transportation, debt, insurance, taxes, lifestyle commitments, and investing. If you optimize the biggest decisions, you often don't need to obsess over every minor purchase. Minimalism applies to financial attention too. Rule 12. Define what enough means. This may be the most important rule of all. Because if you never define enough, more will always appear necessary. A bigger home, a newer vehicle, a higher salary, more expensive vacations, more possessions, more status. The target keeps moving. And if your definition of success is simply having more than you have today, there may never be a finish line. Defining enough doesn't mean abandoning ambition. You can still pursue a higher income. You can still build businesses. You can still invest aggressively. You can still want exceptional things. The difference is that your ambition has a destination. Maybe enough means having no high-interest debt. Maybe it means 6 months of essential expenses in reserve. Maybe it means being able to take several months away from work without financial panic. Maybe it means reaching a point where your investments cover a meaningful portion of your lifestyle. Your definition will be different, but without one, your lifestyle can expand forever. And that brings us back to the real purpose of financial minimalism. It was never about owning fewer things. It was about creating fewer obligations. Because every unnecessary obligation makes a claim on your future income, and every obligation you remove gives some of that future back to you. Think about the person who receives a raise and immediately upgrades everything around them. Their income increased, but so did the cost of maintaining their life. Now compare that with someone who allows their lifestyle to rise slowly, while directing a meaningful share of each increase towards savings, investments, and flexibility. Years later, the difference may be enormous. Not because one person discovered a secret investment, not because the other person never enjoyed life. The difference came from something much quieter. One person kept creating new things they had to pay for. The other became increasingly selective about what deserved their money. And that may be the deeper lesson behind minimalist finance. Money is not only a tool for buying things. It is a way of purchasing future choices. Every dollar you don't commit unnecessarily can remain available for something more important later. A job change, a family decision, a business opportunity, a period of rest, an investment, or simply the ability to say no when you need to. Financial freedom is often described as having enough money to do whatever you want. But there is another way to understand it. It is having so few unnecessary financial obligations that you have room to choose. And perhaps that is what enough really gives you. Not less life. More control over the life you already have.